My name is Emily Hayes, 26 years old, living in a small town in Ohio. They say Christmas is a time for family reunions, the warmest moment of the year. But for me, that Christmas forever changed my life. It was like a shattered mirror, exposing all the cracks that had long existed in my family, ones no one dared to touch before. I was born the youngest of three siblings. My older sister Claire was always seen as the epitome of glamour and perfection: designer dresses, European vacations, dazzling social media photos. My brother Daniel was different, arrogant, smug, often viewing me as a failure. To my parents, Claire and Daniel were always the pride of the family, while I was just a faint shadow. Throughout my childhood, I grew used to being compared, overlooked, and eventually learned to stay silent, swallowing my grievances. Only one person in the family had my absolute trust: my grandmother, Margaret. She was strict but fair. She often said, "Family may not be perfect, but fairness must never be absent." Because of her, I believed I had at least one person to lean on. I had no idea that trust would be tested on a winter night glittering with holiday lights. That Christmas Eve, the family gathered at my grandparents' old house. The red brick home was blanketed in snow, with pine wreaths hanging by the windows and Christmas music filling the rooms. The dining table was draped in a white cloth, laden with turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, traditional holiday fare. The atmosphere seemed festive, but I felt suffocated. Claire's booming laughter, Daniel's endless boasting about his new BMW, it all felt like invisible knives reminding me I never belonged here. I tried to stay calm, forcing a smile, picking at some salad. Things might have stayed there if Grandma Margaret hadn't raised her wine glass, smiling proudly, and said, "I'm so relieved Emily's tuition has been fully covered by her parents all these years. It puts my mind at ease." My fork froze. I looked up, stunned at Grandma. "What tuition money?" I asked, my voice trembling. The table fell deathly silent. My dad dropped his fork, the clatter of metal jarring. My mom fumbled, her trembling hand tilting her red wine glass, spilling a blood-like stain across the pristine white tablecloth. I glanced around. Claire furrowed her brow and scrolled her phone, pretending not to hear. Daniel bit his lip, avoiding my gaze. Grandma's radiant face darkened. "Emily, you mean you didn't know? I sent your parents $50,000 a year since you turned 18 for your college education." My ears rang, my heart pounding. All eyes were on me, but I could only stammer, "I never got a single cent. I dropped out in my sophomore year because I couldn't afford tuition." The air grew thick. My parents sat frozen, silent. Grandma slowly set down her glass, her eyes icy enough to make even me shudder. "So where did that money go?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it shook the room. Silence, then Grandma answered for everyone. "Claire, your Paris honeymoon. Daniel, your new BMW. Am I right?" Claire paled, saying nothing. Daniel bowed his head, gripping his napkin tightly. I sat motionless, as if my soul had been split in two. Tears welled up, but I held them back. I didn't want them to see me break. Standing, my voice hoarse but firm, I said, "Thank you, Grandma, for telling the truth. Now I understand. I was never part of this family." With that, I turned and walked out. Each step was heavy, yet freeing. I left behind Grandma's stunned look, my parents' unease, and the heavy silence of my siblings. Outside, the cold wind howled through the trees, but somehow it felt better than the stifling air inside that house. That Christmas Eve, I left the dinner table with dry eyes but a shattered heart. I realized some truths, once revealed, leave no way back. From that moment, I knew my life would take a completely different path. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own flesh and blood, you'd understand how heavy my silence was that night. I'm not sharing this story to complain, but to remind you that sometimes truth emerges in the most unexpected moments. A seemingly harmless comment, an accidental detail. Have you ever been at a family gathering where one sentence changed everything? Share with me. I left that Christmas dinner with a heavy heart, my steps aimless on the snow-covered path to my rundown apartment in Columbus. The biting wind stung my skin, but it was kinder than the icy indifference in my family's eyes. That night, the sky held no stars, only darkness surrounding me, mirroring my mood. My apartment could hardly be called a home. The walls were stained with damp. The wooden floor creaked with every step. The old heater hummed feebly, barely warming the room. I sat on my flimsy bed, back against the cold wall, my mind reeling from what I'd just learned. My own parents had deceived me for years. I'd thought my poverty was fate, not the selfish choices of those I called family. Closing my eyes, memories rushed in like a torrent. I recalled the day I left college, sophomore year, when financial aid suddenly stopped. I cried in the advisor's office, begging for more time, for a chance, but every door slammed shut. At home, trembling, I asked Mom, "I can't afford tuition anymore. Do I have to drop out?" She sighed, flipping through a fashion magazine. "Emily, not everyone's cut out for college. Maybe you should work. Don't make things harder for yourself." Her casual words, light as a feather, crushed me like a boulder. I waited for a hug, some encouragement, but got nothing. Instead, I saw Dad's proud gaze as Daniel bragged about his golf lessons at a private school, and heard Claire's laughter as she packed for Paris. Those images haunted me. Me in a greasy grocery store uniform, the smell of oil in my hair, cheap shoes worn thin, clutching an old textbook, still trying to study. Meanwhile, Daniel gleamed in his shiny new BMW, revving the engine like he wanted the whole neighborhood to notice. The contrast choked me. It wasn't because I didn't try, I was never given a fair shot. Many nights after, I sat alone in my cramped room, eating cheap instant noodles, then heading to night shifts. I remember standing in the grocery store at 3 a.m., neon lights flickering overhead, eyes burning from lack of sleep. Outside, the wind cut like knives. Inside, my heart was a cold void. Sometimes I'd pull out my phone staring at Claire's posts. Silk dresses flowing under a Parisian sunset, a wine glass shimmering in her hand, captioned #newlywed bliss. Meanwhile, I skipped breakfast to pay utility bills. I'd see Daniel grinning behind the wheel of his new car, whistling like the world was his. I felt like an outsider in my own family. That feeling was a smoldering humiliation. I wasn't just poor, I was belittled, seen as a failure. I'd wondered, maybe I was never truly loved. That Christmas night, after the truth came out, I lay sleepless on my stiff bed, staring at the stained ceiling. Outside, the wind howled through the window cracks. Anger and bitterness surged within me. I felt stripped bare, as if years of endurance and effort had only earned me betrayal. But amid the chaos, a spark flickered. If Grandma hadn't mentioned the money, I'd never have known. And now that I did, I couldn't ignore it. They'd stolen my chance once. I couldn't let them bury me in silence again. That night, I didn't sleep. I scribbled in my old notebook, "Find the truth, find where the money went. Don't let this go." Those words were a vow to myself. Sometimes, I think if anyone saw me then, a young woman curled up in a cold room, eyes blazing in the dark, they'd laugh at my naive dreams. But I knew, for the first time in years, I didn't feel worthless. I had a right to know, a right to reclaim what was mine. That night, I realized pain can destroy you, but it can also be the fire that pushes you to rise. And I chose the latter. If you've ever been abandoned by your own family, you'd understand the strange mix of icy despair and burning resolve in my chest that night. It was a blend of hopelessness and hope, heartbreak and determination. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew I couldn't go back. And that was the start of the journey I'm about to share. If you find this story compelling, comment Y. If not, comment N. Let me know if anyone's truly with me on this journey. Some nights felt so long I thought I'd be trapped in bitterness forever. But one cold morning in Columbus, I walked into the public library, where faint light from dusty windows fell on rows of old computers. I didn't know what I'd find, only that my heart urged me. There must be proof. I need the truth. The hum of the room's fan mixed with the clack of keyboards. I logged into a yellowed computer, my fingers trembling as I entered personal details, accessing loan and scholarship systems. Data scrolled by, each line like a knife to my heart. Then I saw it. An education trust fund set up at my birth, under Grandma Margaret's name. $50,000 a year, disbursed from when I turned 18, clearly noted, for Emily Hayes' education. My heart raced. I scrolled, seeing each withdrawal. Every year the money vanished from the account, funneled through my parents. But instead of going to college, to textbooks or classes, it evaporated. Not one tuition receipt, not one payment confirmation. I gripped the mouse until my fingers went numb. In that moment, I understood. My college dreams weren't beyond my ability, as Mom claimed. They'd been stolen by my own parents. I printed everything. Every page, every statement, every dry line, now vivid proof of my pain. Tucking them into a folder, I held it like it was the only truth left. That afternoon, I went to Grandma's. Her red brick house, with its familiar back porch, still carried the faint scent of apple pie. When she opened the door, plastic curlers in her hair, her eyes were stern yet warm. "Emily, you're early. Come in, it's cold." I didn't reply, just held up the folder. She glanced at it, surprised, then serious. We sat at the kitchen table, where the yellow light illuminated the papers I spread out. With each line she read, her frail hands trembled. Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anguish. Finally, her voice broke. I trusted them. They told me you were studying abroad in Switzerland. They even sent photos. Oh, Emily." I laughed, a bitter, glass-shard laugh. Switzerland? The closest I got was Googling their flag. In reality, I was working night shifts at a convenience store. She covered her mouth, tears streaming. In that moment, she aged a decade. But quickly, her face hardened. She wasn't just the kind grandma by the fireplace anymore. She was a warrior. She gripped my hand, her frail fingers strong. "You're not alone anymore, Emily. I'll stand with you to the end." A spark flared in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt protected. That evening, she called her old lawyer, Mr. Harris, who'd set up the trust. Hours later, we were in his office, surrounded by towering files. He flipped through my papers, his expression growing graver. "This isn't just financial mismanagement. This is fraud and misappropriation. There's solid ground for a lawsuit." Grandma nodded, her voice cold as steel. "Do whatever it takes. I won't let them keep trampling my granddaughter." I sat beside her, my heart trembling yet alive. For years, I'd been belittled, sidelined. Now, someone was standing up for me, not with empty words, but with the force of law. The next day, we went to the bank. The branch manager, a middle-aged woman with thick glasses, looked uneasy as Grandma laid out the papers. With a firm voice, she said, "This was my money, set up for my granddaughter. It's been misused for years. I demand the bank investigate immediately." The manager bowed her head, acknowledging the severity and promising to escalate the case. I looked at Grandma, filled with awe. An 80-year-old woman, standing tall, eyes sharp, unyielding. On the drive back, she held my hand tightly. "Emily, you've endured too much. But from today, you're not alone. We'll take back what's yours. They betrayed us both, and they'll pay." I stared out the car window, streetlights flashing by like shards of light piercing the dark. Anger lingered, but for the first time it didn't turn to despair. It became strength. That night, I wrote down everything, each line etched onto the page. This fight is just beginning, but now I have an ally. I knew the road ahead would be rough. Lawsuits, investigations, pushback from my parents and siblings. But with Grandma by my side, I was no longer the lonely girl sidelined at the Christmas table. I had an alliance, and it would change everything. If you're moved by stories like mine and feel a connection, check out my previous videos on this channel. Some family dinners are just for show, painting a picture of warmth. Others rip open hidden cracks. That New Year's dinner was the latter. Grandma Margaret personally called each family member, her voice calm but firm. "Tomorrow night, everyone must be here. No excuses." Hearing that, I sensed a storm brewing. Her familiar dining room glowed with candlelight and a crystal chandelier. The table held golden roast chicken, steaming mashed potatoes, sparkling crystal glasses. It looked like a typical reunion, but the air was so heavy a single breath could shatter the silence. My parents arrived first, dressed neatly, faces tense, but trying to act natural. Claire swept in last, her hair perfectly curled, her perfume overpowering the food's aroma. Daniel followed quietly, eyes averted, shoulders slightly hunched, unlike his usual arrogance. I sat beside Grandma, my heart pounding with both nerves and resolve. She sat at the head, eyes blazing, back straight like a general before battle. After awkward small talk, Grandma set down her utensils, clapping twice. A maid brought out a thick envelope and placed it on the table. Grandma opened it slowly, pulling out statements, records, undeniable evidence. "This is the trust fund I set up for Emily," she said, her voice like steel. "Every dollar, every year, every signature. And here's proof it was all drained by you." Dad lurched forward, face red. "Mom, this is a misunderstanding. We just managed the money sensibly. Emily couldn't have used all that." Grandma cut him off. "Sensibly? Managed? You mean buying Daniel a BMW, sending Claire to Paris for her honeymoon, while Emily dropped out and worked night shifts to survive?" Mom trembled, her voice softening. "Mom, we just wanted the best for all three kids. Emily's always been fragile, not suited for college, while Claire and Daniel needed investment." Her words made me stand. My body shook, but my voice was steel. "You didn't just take money. You took my future. You decided I wasn't worth educating, worth trying for. You stole my dreams and gave them to others." Claire scoffed, tossing her utensils down. "Oh, come on, Emily, you always play the victim. Ever think you just weren't good enough?" I met her eyes, rage rising. "Not good enough? I worked night shifts, ate instant noodles, begged for chances while you flew to Paris and he drove a luxury car. Every time I asked for help, Mom said, 'Not everyone's meant for college. Don't tell me I'm not good enough. I was never given a chance to prove myself.'" Daniel sat silent, head bowed, hands clenched on his lap. For the first time, he didn't mock or retort. His unusual silence surprised me, but I had no time to dwell on it. Grandma stood. We all fell quiet. Her gaze swept over each of us, slow but commanding. "I've lived long enough to know right from wrong. You, my children I trusted, betrayed not just Emily, but me. Did you think lies would blind me forever? No. From today, prepare to face the law." Her words landed like a hammer. No one dared speak. My parents froze, Mom sobbed, Claire angrily tossed her napkin, and Daniel sat motionless, staring at the floor. My heart was heavy yet strangely light. For years I'd been belittled, abandoned. Now someone was publicly defending me. The dining room's air was torn apart. The grandfather clock ticked heavily. We sat like strangers trapped together. No more polished facades, no forced smiles, just raw truth. I left the table, standing beside Grandma. In her eyes, I saw the resolve I'd longed for from my parents. I knew then our family was broken, and an unavoidable fight had begun. The Cleveland courthouse that January morning was cloaked in cold gray. Melting ice dripped along the sidewalk, breaths turning to white mist. I sat on the stone steps outside, hands freezing despite being clasped tightly. My heart raced with both excitement and fear. Today, the truth wouldn't just be papers in a folder. It would be laid bare before the law and the world. In the courtroom, neon lights cast a harsh glow on tense faces. Grandma sat beside me, back straight, eyes unwavering, a pillar of strength. My parents sat across, faces stiff, whispering to their lawyer. Claire crossed her arms, lips curled in her usual haughty way. Daniel sat quietly, eyes down, no trace of his usual sarcasm. As the hearing began, the air thickened. Our lawyer presented the evidence: trust fund records, withdrawals, purchases for cars and trips. Each document read aloud was a knife carving deeper into my heart. This was my future, traded for others' fleeting glory. Dad tried to argue it was a temporary arrangement, that they always planned to repay me. Mom cried, voice breaking, "We just wanted the best for all three kids," Claire whispered to their lawyer, shooting me disdainful looks, as if this was a cheap drama I'd staged. I sat there, hands trembling, filled with anger and hurt, but I knew the truth was on my side. I just had to wait my turn. Then the judge asked, "Does anyone else in the family wish to speak?" The room went silent. I expected nothing. I was too used to their indifference. But then, a chair creaked beside Dad. Daniel stood. I was stunned. He, the one who always saw me as a failure, who mocked my grocery store uniform, slowly stepped to the witness stand. His voice trembled but was clear. Your Honor, I can't stay silent. I know my parents used Emily's college money to buy my BMW. I knew it was meant for her. I benefited from this injustice. Murmurs rippled through the room. I stared, heart pounding, not from anger but disbelief at what I was hearing. Daniel continued, eyes avoiding mine. I didn't deserve that favoritism. Emily's the one who truly worked hard. She toiled while we lived lavishly off money meant for her. I take responsibility for my part. And I only ask the court to be lenient with my parents. They raised us after all. I choked up. All my life, Daniel had mocked and belittled me. But in that moment, I saw a rare spark of conscience in his eyes. Not perfection, not full redemption, but truth. And he chose to speak it, even if it meant disgrace. I stood, stepping closer to the stand. My voice shook but was clear. Daniel, you've hurt me so many times. I thought you'd always see me as a spare. But today I believe you can change. Thank you for telling the truth. He bowed his head, and for the first time I saw him without arrogance or smugness, just a man facing his conscience. The judge noted his testimony, then turned to my parents. Dad said nothing, his face ashen. Mom sobbed, her eloquent excuses gone. Claire glared at Daniel as if he'd betrayed them all. But I saw clearly, the game had shifted. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, the judge ruled. The plaintiff's parents breached their fiduciary duty, misappropriating funds. The court orders full restitution of all money and related assets to be returned to the rightful beneficiary, Emily Hayes. The room fell silent. My heart pounded, feeling like invisible chains had broken after years of holding me back. Grandma gripped my hand, her eyes shining with pride. Tears escaped me, but they weren't of shame anymore. They were of liberation. In that moment, I glanced at Daniel. He didn't smile or speak, but his eyes, for the first time, held no disdain. Leaving the courthouse, my steps were lighter than ever. But I knew this was just the start. I'd won a battle, but the war was long. My parents wouldn't accept defeat easily, and Claire would surely seek revenge. I didn't know what they'd do next. I only knew I was no longer afraid. And in that moment I realized the true victory wasn't just the money I reclaimed, but the spark of humanity I saw in the brother who once belittled me. A small spark, but enough to make me believe change was possible. Do you believe a few months can completely transform a life? I once thought I'd be trapped in betrayal's shadow forever, but now, writing this in my new Columbus apartment, I see sometimes pain is the start of freedom. My rented apartment isn't big, just a small living room, a bedroom, and a tidy kitchen. But to me, it's a world. I pay the rent myself, decorate every corner, from pale blue curtains to a cute bookshelf in the corner. Each morning, spring sunlight streams through the window, and I know this is my life, and no one can take it away. The court restitution cleared my debts and left a little savings. I didn't rush to spend it. Instead, I carefully banked it like safeguarding newfound trust. Grandma Margaret visits often, bringing the warm scent of apple pie, grumbling that I need to eat better. One afternoon, she opened her bag and pulled out a thick folder. These are brochures from some universities. If you want to go back, I'll sponsor you. This time, no one can stop you. I stared at the folder, emotions swelling. Part of me wanted to cry, part was afraid. My dreams had been crushed once. Did I have the courage to start again? Grandma, am I too old to go back to school? I asked softly. She placed a hand on my shoulder, her eyes bright and warm. You're never too old to learn, Emily. What matters is if you want to. You fought for this chance. Don't let it slip. In that moment, I realized she wasn't just giving me a folder. She was giving me a door to the future I thought I'd lost. The biggest surprise came from Daniel. I thought his courtroom awakening was just a moment of weakness. But no, he started visiting, not to ask for money or favors, but to fix a light bulb, repair a wobbly shelf, or just listen to me talk about work. Once he sighed and said something that stunned me. I used to think you were just a shadow, but turns out, you're the one with real strength. I didn't reply right away, I just looked at him, and an old wound began to heal. Things wouldn't be perfect overnight. But Daniel had taken a step toward me, and I chose to open my heart to it. Meanwhile, Claire and my parents faded into a quiet life in a rented suburban house. No more luxury cars, no trips, no lavish parties. The lawsuit's publicity cost them their reputation. Friends turned away, acquaintances avoided them. I didn't gloat or revel. I just felt sad that they'd brought this on themselves. I know forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but holding on to hate only brings exhaustion. One evening, in my quiet apartment, I wrote in my journal, "They took my chance, but I choose to believe people can change. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it gives me a lighter future." Closing the journal, I slept deeply for the first time. No nightmares, no waking in the night. That spring, I enrolled in part-time college courses at a local university. Not to prove anything to anyone, but to prove to myself my dreams never died. Holding my new student ID, my hands shook, eyes blurring with tears. I thought of the girl who left campus in shame and whispered, "We're back." One afternoon, walking with Grandma under cherry blossom trees, she said, "See, Emily, justice isn't just in courtrooms. It's in how you choose to live after the truth comes out. You chose freedom over hate. That's the real victory." I squeezed her hand, filled with deep gratitude. Without her, I might still be trapped in bitterness. As I write this, I walk Columbus's sunlit streets, head held high. Spring light bathes my face like a blessing. I'm no longer the girl crying in a rundown apartment, abandoned. I'm a woman who's walked through fire, learned to forgive, and found freedom in her own heart. Closing this story, I want to share something simple yet profound. Sometimes, the deepest wounds come from family, but from them, we learn the strength to rise, to reclaim our worth. I've walked through betrayal, belittlement, feeling like no one was on my side. Yet, I found justice isn't just in court rulings, but in the heart's choices. To forgive, to be compassionate, to move forward without letting the past hold you back. I'm not sharing this to fuel hate, but to remind you that, no matter the circumstances, you deserve to live true to your worth. If this story means something to you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, or just a why to let me know you're with me. Don't forget to follow my channel. There are more everyday stories that might touch your heart.